In this video we're going to look at strategies to solve painter's block, and I'm going to tell you why you procrastinate and probably don't paint as much as you could. We're going to talk about the ultimate thing that keeps you from painting, and why knowing your enemy is going to help you win this battle. My name's Chris, and you're watching Travarian Miniatures. Sponsored by Skillshare. If you're painting miniatures, I'm sure you have experienced this. It's a constant factor in creative hobbies and all creative endeavors. We want to sit down, we want to create and get shit done, but we're too tired, we're not inspired, family and friends are keeping us from painting, and there's so many other important things to do. Or maybe we are really just sabotaging ourselves. What keeps us from painting is some sort of resistance, and this resistance is what stands between what we are doing and what we want to do. It stands between us and the body weight we want to lose, the education we want to get, the armies and golden demon winners we are not painting. It's what makes us live the safe life, not the life we want to live. Any act that is not focused on instant gratification, but focuses on the long term, incites this form of resistance. Resistance comes from within, and will do anything to keep you from being productive. Some of us do this for a living, and some of us do it for a hobby. Everyone's goals are slightly different. Some paint to play, some paint to put pretty miniatures into a cabinet. As diverse as we are, there cannot be a video about one solution that solves everyone's problem. But telling you what I do to overcome this resistance, and trust me, it appears all the time, hopefully can inspire you to find your own solution for your individual situation. So in the first part, I will tell you what you can do. Then we will look at what you should not do, and in the last part, we will look at a few psychological reasons why especially miniature painting is so hard. And because you're awesome, you're going to watch the full video, but if you want to return to this video and rewatch certain parts, there's going to be timestamps in the description. And if you want to go completely crazy and break the YouTube algorithm, just give this video a like. Another reason why there cannot be a one-size-fits-all video for this is because the problems change as you progress in your painting career. When you start out, it can be overwhelming to learn all of this new stuff, and you may be wondering, can I do this at all? While later you might be doubting yourself and whether or not you're realizing your artistic potential. There's a difference between being burned out because you paint commissions all day and being burned out because you are chasing these painting competition wins and you're neglecting the joy of painting. And obviously some of these problems can be solved by a simple change of behavior, while for others we need to dig deeper. I know having a dedicated workspace where you are painting can be a luxury for a lot of us. But having to bring out your painting gear means you have an extra layer of resistance to overcome. If you have to go to storage and bring out your paints and palette, you're going to think twice about whether or not you're going to start painting today. And of course, it also takes time away from your painting time to bring everything out and putting it back into storage. I know this sounds cheesy and like it's coming directly from a self-help book, but I'm not a very organized person, and even for me, it's a good thing to start with a clean workspace. It's like my mind gets uncluttered and I can wipe away anything related to the project I just finished and get a fresh start. And as I keep going, my space gets cluttered again anyway, as this is part of my process. But imagine starting something new in this mess. Yikes. Set a certain time that is spent exclusively on painting. Everyone around you is going to get used to it and interrupt you less. And most importantly, it will become a habit. It doesn't matter if it's your job and you spend 7 or 8 hours just painting per day, or if you have half an hour each day to spend on a hobby. If it's a profession, get up in the morning and know that you will be at the table by a certain time and start to paint. For me, knowing I have to be at my teaching job by 7:45 in the morning helps me to get up and get into gear. I could just slack off and sleep longer on days where I don't have to teach and where I can focus on making videos. But I make sure to approach it professionally and not try to be at my table by 8:15 after reading the newspaper and having a cup of coffee. If you only have an hour per day to paint, make sure to sit down at exactly the same hour and get shit done for the full hour. As long as you make it a regular thing, your brain gets used to it. The Power of Habit is a great book, and I can only recommend it if you want to use this principle also in other fields of your life. I will leave a link to this book and to others in the description. Try to get rid of distractions. Video games, TV shows, and getting some likes on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are the ultimate instant gratification machines, and having them available at any time is really distracting. If you can, get a painting space without a device that is connected to the internet. Maybe listen to some music or a podcast instead. I have my painting space set up for recording, so I have to have a monitor in front of me, and if I'm not careful, I drift off and spend hours discussing painting theory with others on my Discord server. Make sure to put away your mobile phone too. And by the way, no distractions is another thing that a clean workspace will contribute to. Setting realistic goals applies in the long term and also to each painting session. Make a list of what is left to paint and work through it like a to-do list. As you check off one point after the other from your list, you will see that you make progress and get shit done, and oh, look what we have here, gratification. Take that, monkey. If your painting time is limited, organizing your workload into these bite-sized chunks that maybe will fit into an hour of painting and seeing what stands at the end of these sessions will have a big positive impact on your motivation, as we're going to see at the end of the video. If it's on a list, you can literally see it. Amazing. As for long-term goals, focus on discrete steps to take to get better. Don't say I want to paint better, that's too diffuse, almost ethereal. Say I want to understand how reflections work on a metal object and put them in the correct place on the mini. Slowly add these incremental steps together and you will get better and at the same time see the progress. For this, it's a good idea to have practice miniatures. Not only can you practice something you want to get better at on them, but a lot of pressure comes from being afraid to try something new on one of these expensive toy soldiers you really care about. So get a couple of cheap minis, or if you have a 3D printer, print out a few that you really don't care about and just practice away. Having two projects that you can switch between can really keep the hobby fresh. The more time you spend on a single figure or the color scheme of an army, the more likely you will associate tediousness with this and repetitiveness. Sometimes it's good to switch gears. If army painting, for example, becomes too repetitive, switch to something different that will use different parts of your brain. And if on the other hand, you get stuck in something too complicated, it's good to have something where muscle memory kicks in and something that's more comfortable to paint to fall back on. If you feel like being creative, but minis just don't scratch the itch right now, are you too anxious to work on miniatures because you're afraid to screw something up? You might consider switching medium for a while. For me, the pressure in another medium is not that high. I can enjoy the process for what it is, instead of feeling like I always have to give my best. To me, working with watercolors has been a nice change of pace. You can get nice results relatively quickly, and the basics of the techniques are easy to pick up. And this is where this video's sponsor comes in. And I'm always happy when Skillshare decides to come back and sponsor a video, because I can wholeheartedly recommend their service to anyone who wants to learn some new creative skills. I was able to learn my watercolor basics from these videos, and I'm gradually following a few advanced classes to get better at it. There's a ton of other creators on the platform, like Jazza for example, who has an awesome illustration class, and there's a lot more in the creative section to explore. Skillshare is an online learning platform where you can learn many useful skills for miniature painting and beyond. Apart from the classes I already mentioned, I always recommend the photography classes for both mobile phones and DSLR cameras. But you can find so many other tutorials there that the monthly fee becomes a bargain when comparing it to the well of knowledge that awesome creators have put on the platform. So I'm happy that I can offer a free trial of Skillshare Premium to the first 1,000 people that click the link in the description. And yes, that means access to full premium with no strings attached. And the best thing is, you're also supporting this channel in the process. Why not give it a try? If you really don't feel like painting for a longer period of time, why not do something simple but useful? Something that still moves your hobby goals forward and you can see progress with. Assemble some miniatures, build a diorama, sort through your bits to see if you can find anything that upgrades one of your characters, or build a few bases. One of my favorite pastimes when I don't feel like painting is just building bases, without minis in mind. To me, it's a bit like building a Zen garden. Don't wait for the muse to strike. Sit down and get into gear. The first brush stroke is always the hardest. You can go back to one of your practice miniatures and just have a warm-up session of 10 minutes with one of these. Or just start by simply applying a base layer. You can screw anything up with that. At least I hope so. The artist doesn't wait for inspiration to strike. He or she gets to work in anticipation of its apparition. It's a quote by Steven Pressfield from the book The War of Art, another book that I can recommend, especially if you are doing this professionally. Another thing that might discourage you from painting is comparing yourself to others. Don't do that. Only compare what you can do today to what you were able to do yesterday. Only care about your own growth, not how it compares to others. That doesn't mean you shouldn't learn from others though. Sometimes when browsing through the work of others, we get the feeling that all of these artists are so inspired, so creative, but don't forget that a lot of artists look at other media, movies, or reference pictures and other people's artwork when it comes to painting in order to get references and ideas. You can read the lore and other source material, look at artworks by Games Workshop, comics, art books, classical paintings. The more different all of these things are, the better. It will help you find your groove, it will help you find ideas, and it will help you to further define your style in the process. And you're going to get a ton of new ideas and inspiration. Don't chase perfection. It's fine to create one idea where only one aspect that was fun to do is realized and the other parts are left in a simplest state, and then move on to the next creative spark. Finished, not perfect, is a slogan that regularly makes rounds in creative circles. And most of all, don't beat yourself up over the standard of your minis. You have to be aware that you see every mistake because you spend so much time working on it and looking at it, and others won't see it or won't even label it as a mistake. Being critic about your work is crucial for growth, but this hobby can quickly turn into a negative experience if you constantly beat yourself up. And who wants to spend time on something that creates negative emotions? We already talked about channeling your creativity into different outlets for a while. But if you really feel like you can't go on with painting, then take time off and do something completely different. It's fine. If you're anything like me, you will miss miniature painting eventually, and your miniatures and your paints will be here waiting for your return. Remember, you are most likely not doing this as a profession. You paint because it's fun, and if you don't paint for fun and because it's a job, you will have to find strategies that make you sit down and get your work done anyway. But if it's a hobby, make sure it stays fun. There's no need to guilt yourself into making progress. Slow down and think about painting. Notice what comes to mind. Do you have positive or negative feelings associated with it? And if it's negative feelings, you have to analyze where do they come from and what solutions are there to turn everything into a positive experience instead. In the next part, I want to help you see why you might experience painting burnout, because only knowing your enemy and yourself will help you succeed. Painting is a taxing activity. It takes a lot of energy to sit down and paint these tiny miniatures. And when we never see accomplishment, it becomes something we don't really enjoy. So we have to create this framework we talked about, because seeing accomplishment is what makes us push further and helps us to get into the flow. So what are the psychological reasons that prevent this flow state? Which is where we want to be, because the flow helps us to work for hours and hours and having fun while doing so. A big factor is uncertainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety, it creates fear, and we evolved to avoid situations that scare us. Creative acts, by definition, put us into situations where we don't necessarily know the outcome. That's an exciting thing, but it's also scary. And the more novice we are in a field, the scarier it also is. Take, for example, starting an education. You're not going to know what you will learn. It's exciting, but it's also scary. What's at the end of it? You might have an idea, but you don't really know. And how could you? Starting a business brings uncertainty. Are you going to have enough customers? Where are you going to be 5 years down the line? Like we said in the beginning, anything that is focused on the long term and not the instant gratification incites resistance. We are the monkeys that live for today and don't plan ahead. Because who knows? In a year from now, you might have already been eaten by a tiger anyway.
There is a difference.
Instant gratification is a thing, and it doesn't even have to be instant. The gratification has to be tangible for the activity to make us stick to it. Video games are a good example where you know that eventually you will receive a reward and what the reward will be. It's like a carrot that's dangled in front of you. If you grind this area long enough, eventually you will drop the item you're looking for. And even if you have to invest hours or days, you know the outcome of your effort. You don't always know what the outcome of your art will be. What will it look like? Are you going to like it? Are others going to like it? With art, you don't always know. It's a journey where the goal is not quite clear, and that creates fear. And the less you know about the basics and how to do certain things, the less clear the outcome is going to be, and the more you're going to be paralyzed. This is why videos that give you a recipe are so popular. You know where it's going, alright, no need to be afraid. Take my hand, I'll show you the result, and this is how we get to it. And that's also why it's cozy to sometimes settle for less and not trying to learn new things. So what happens if you become more and more proficient in any field? The uncertainty of the outcome becomes less and less. You can imagine the end result better, even at the start. That's the long-term perspective, but it's also true for the short term. Sometimes with a miniature, you have to grind through the initial steps until progress and an end result become visible. With anything you do, try to create situations that will incite positive feelings or create the groundwork for positive experiences to take place. Create opportunities for self-gratification that you can see, like organizing your painting into distinct steps that you can cross off a list, or any of the other tips we mentioned in the first 2 parts of the video. Hopefully this video gave you the tools to beat the painting blues next time it shows its ugly head. And remember to be awesome and like the video, and to subscribe if you're new here and you don't want to miss any future upload. Also check out the links to the books I mentioned in the description, and there's a ton of other ways to support me for free as well as monetarily by buying some of my PDF guides on my website or joining my Patreon campaign down in that box as well. Oh, and if you like this video, I'm sure you're going to like any of the videos showing on screen right now, because I handpicked them especially for you. Thanks to all my patrons for making these videos possible, and thanks for watching.